The new project is about portraits. The first exercise is going to focus primarily on the proportions of the face, and we will also look at tone and detail as we go along. Now, I've started with a photograph, a nice clear black and white photograph of a face that has nicely looking directly at the camera. We've got some shadows to work on. We've got the details are nice and clear, and there's not any dramatic expression, making it more challenging for us. The face is not obscured by the hair, and we've got something that's going to be really straightforward to draw. Now, the key focus for us with this particular exercise is how the features of the face, the eyes, the nose, the mouth, etc., relate to each other. And that's going to give us some general rules that we can apply to any portrait that we come across. Now, not every face follows the rules as clearly as this particular one does. I've chosen it for those reasons, that it fits this really well. But it gives you a sort of a template, a guide. If you understand roughly how the eyes and the nose relate and the mouth relate to each other, then you can look for differences. Does a face do something slightly different than expected, or does it follow exactly as you would hope it is going to be like? So, first of all, you'll find on the course this image. Now, I have drawn here a square, and the square is based on the proportions of the width of the eyes. I've taken that distance and I brought it down from the top of the eyes to the bottom of the lips. That is exactly the same distance. Now, there is the way that different faces work. You can line up the square with the mouth, and often that will line up with the eyebrows. On this particular occasion, I've done it like this. You'll notice that the centre line is right down the middle of the nose and focuses on the tip. So we have a face that is quite evenly proportioned. It's quite balanced and symmetrical, and we can use this grid to help us kind of understand how these parts relate to each other. I've also drawn thirds from left to right. These are based on the proportions of the eye. You will notice that each third is an eye's width. From top to bottom, I've gone into quarters. I've done that particularly because of the way that the nose fits. I could have used that eye measurement again, particularly if you're doing something from face, and I'd have the cheekbone there and maybe just below the nose. As you can see, these two lines on this particular portrait, this particular face, don't meet up with so many things. So while it's quite helpful to know that that eye goes from the top of the eye 3 times down to the bottom of the mouth, it's not particularly, those lines aren't particularly helpful at this particular point. So the first thing we need to do is copy our square. You will need a ruler or a straight edge, or you can even just take the image, fold it, and mark out across your page. If you're working from an iPad or a screen, then you can use a measurement. So like for example, 6 would give you 2 lots of 3 and then 4 lots of 1.5. If you're just measuring that out. If I put my grid. As you can see, I've drawn out my grid. I've done it so that it follows exactly on from my page, which is going to make it even easier to transfer the features from here onto my drawing. You'll notice that the grid is really light. We don't want to actually have a drawing of a grid. We just want to know where the features of the face go. So you don't want to be jamming the pencil into the paper here. You want to keep it as light as you can. I'm just going to add those extra lines. Now, going across here, what have I got? 2.5. There we go. That's roughly there. 2.5. 2.5. Just another 2.5. And then I'm going to to do that one by eye. I'm going to follow those lines across. There we go. So I can start thinking about the positions of my features. I always start with things like the eyes. Rather than trying to go for this straight in for the complicated shape, I want to know where any shape starts and finishes. So the corners of the eyes are really, really helpful. And as you can see, the inside of the eye is slightly lower than the outside of the eye. I'm just going to get, what else am I noticing here? Some little triangles just in the corner. It's quite straight as I go along the bottom. By breaking it up into these little sections, it stops me doing that classic almond shape, which once it's drawn on the page tends to not leave. And each of these, what we're really trying to focus on here is looking at the eye and really understanding how it works. I'm not going to draw all of the shape. I want to, because as I go around, I'm going to learn more about the shape as I go along. Just noticing these little corners. Anything that touches a line here is really, really helpful. Some of you will have used this method before a little bit with the still life, working from photos. And I'm going round and I'm really trying to understand it. Now, I'm noticing that the way that the iris fits into this box here is almost exactly in thirds again. So without trying to draw the circle, I'm just going to indicate the eye in thirds. It's a little bit strange at the moment, but we can just cut off the bottom corners because, as you'll notice, it's round at the bottom, but it's not round at the top. It is the iris is slightly covered over by the eyelid. That's all I'm going to do for the moment. I'm going to come back to the eyes in a second. I'm not going to completely finish any one area of the drawing so that I can get round the drawing and I can check the whole face before I've completely committed myself. And also, we'll begin to realise that not everything in the face is made up of lines. The tone is going to be a key factor of how we draw things and make the face appear realistic. Now I'm just going quite a little bit quicker now, but I'm trying to very clearly relate every little mark I do. It's gone a bit low actually there, I can bring that up, which is a good example of why we don't rush ahead and draw it in really hard. So I'm just doing little marks, working my way around. I can come down here. Now you'll notice that the nose is almost exactly this eye's width. It is a little bit wider, but that's the sort of thing that will differ on each face. Some noses will be much wider, some noses may be narrower. It's never much smaller than the width of the eyes. And also we've got, this nose is actually quite kind of long by some faces. You'll find that particularly a younger face, there might even be a smaller gap between the eyes. There's only one eye's width between the eye and the corner of the nose here. One of the common things that happens in students' drawings is that individual features become too small. And these kind of relationships, double checking where the nostrils come in relationship to the eye. That's quite almost like a squashed square there. That's similar to this little block. That common mistake is that individual features of the face can become too small. So you've got them roughly in the right place, and then you work on them, and they get a little bit tiny. So it happens so many times. So these relationships and understanding these is going to really help you keep them the right proportion in relation to each other. Now I'm going to look at the mouth, and just like we started with the eyes, I like to start with the corners of the mouth. There's a lot of complicated stuff here, and these are two fixed points. Now, seeing how they relate to the face, I can actually just carry that line down. You can use a ruler or a straight edge of a piece of paper or something, and that is going to give me the corners of the mouth. Now that is something that I can work on. This work with to get the more complicated parts of the face. Now that line isn't completely straight, but it is quite gently curved. But trying to work out exactly how that line goes is quite a challenge, because you've got different things from left to right. You've got these creases on the top lip, and the bottom lip's quite large on this face. And I'm just kind of marking where it crosses the line. Any curve, you need to know where that line is going before you start. Where does that come? That's a little bit hidden behind the line. So I can see where this line comes in relationship to those. Now my grid might not be perfectly accurate. You might find that your grid is either exactly the same as your printout, or you've gone a little bit awry. So always double check with the parts of the face as well as the grid. If you're a complete slave to the grid, you won't be looking at the face well enough. Right, what have I got here? Okay. Just to give myself a little bit more information, I'm going to just start to break out of the grid a little bit. I can see that the jaw is coming out of the corners here. The chin is another one of these little boxes down. So the same distance again. That's going to come along about there. And I can see how that's, as it comes up, as it crosses that line. There's a slight curve that way. This side, and then I can take this round, looking at these distances. All of those lines are giving me quite easily sort of measurable distances. They're going to help me work out how far the face is. It's a bit wide on this side. Maybe the camera isn't quite as straight on. Now, let's have a think about these eyebrows. You can see here, there is the edge of the kind of eye socket. I'm just going to mark that in, because that's going to help us. The other bit is going to be this brow. Now, again, not drawing all the way around eyebrows and features too much. I'm just working on locations of facial elements. Just checking how high that comes up to. Okay. Does that do? Maybe 3/4? Yeah, about 3/4. So I can measure from there, the 3/4 mark, bring that into there, and that's going to help get the forehead, get the hairline. So we've got a method. I haven't finished the entire face. I've got enough information to start comparing and checking and seeing if I've made any mistakes. There will be doubtlessly be some, but I've got pretty much enough information to start thinking about tone, to start double checking all the positions of things, any mistakes that I've made, without having to rub too much out. I could pretty much change anything on that picture probably without rubbing it out. It's very important to keep things light and keep things provisional until you're happy with it. You're learning about any picture that you do while you go along and while you're drawing it, and your understanding of the face will become much greater the longer the time you spend with it. So you don't want to presume the first time you draw the eye, the nose, the mouth, that's the last time you're going to touch it. If you keep open-minded about it and keep expecting to change things, you'll be a lot happier with what you produce. So that's the end of the first session. We'll do tone next, and then we'll go into some details after that.